here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Thursday, September 26th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin, and this is News Generation. Today, we're joined by Park Gi-yoon.
Thank you for having me.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. Now, as usual, we're going to start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items trending online. Concerns are growing over the rise in school violence in South Korea. According to data released by the Education Ministry on Wednesday, 2.1% of elementary, middle, and high school students in the country reported experiencing some form of school violence this year, including verbal abuse and cyberbullying. This is a 0.2 percentage point increase from last year and is the first time in 11 years that the figure has exceeded 2%. Moving on, over in Switzerland, the controversial Sarko suicide pod was used for the first time on Monday at a forest hut in Meereshausen. The pod, which allows users to commit assisted suicide by pushing a button that releases nitrogen, was used by a 64-year-old American woman who had been reportedly suffering from a severely compromised immune system. Swiss police have arrested several individuals on suspicion of inducing, aiding, and abetting suicide. Although assisted dying is legal in Switzerland, the country's health ministry said the Sarko capsule does not meet product safety regulations, and the use of nitrogen in this context is not legally compliant. Finally, Thailand has become the first country in Southeast Asia and the third in Asia after Taiwan and Nepal to legalize same-sex marriage. The law was approved by King Maha Vajiralongkorn and published in Thailand's royal publication, the Royal Gazette, last Tuesday. While the bill cleared the Senate back in June, it required royal endorsement to officially become law. So I want to ask our panelists here in the studio, what are some of the major changes that this new law will bring?
Well, I was really interested in this article, and obviously it's great news for Thailand. But just to let you know that the bill, which grants full legal, financial and medical rights for marriage partners of any gender, which is great, sailed through both of the House of Representatives and the Senate in April and June respectively. Now, the legislation amended the country's civil and commercial code to replace gender-specific words such as men and women with gender-neutral words such as individual.
I see. So it's definitely a landmark law that has been signed by the king yesterday. Now, Thailand has a reputation for being an accepting and inclusive country, but it seems the road to passing the same-sex marriage law wasn't an easy one, right, Kyun?
No, it definitely wasn't. This law will take Thailand struggled for decades to pass a marriage equality law. Thai society largely holds conservative values, and the members of the LGBTQ plus community say they face discrimination in everyday life. The government and state agencies also are historically conservative, and advocates for gender equality had a hard time pushing lawmakers and civil servants to accept the change. But I think Thailand is definitely heading in the right direction where they're trying to include everyone and accept different people with different values. And I think Korea too should one day be heading in this direction, because I think things are changing these days, and I think people need to be a bit more open,
and accepting,
accepting to different values that people have.
Right. So hope we can see more relevant changes in other parts of the world, including Korea as well. Now, Thailand's law will take effect in 120 days, allowing same-sex couples to register their marriages starting January 22nd, 2025. And that was our news feed for this Thursday. So we're now going to move on to our main discussion of the day. Today, we're talking about an eating habit that's becoming more common. Take a look at the screen.
혼밥. This is a term used in Korea to describe eating at a restaurant by yourself. It's a practice that's been gaining popularity over the past few years. More and more people are choosing to dine solo. But it's not just in Korea. According to U.S. restaurant booking platform OpenTable, the number of solo reservations increased by 8% as of May compared to the previous year. In a survey conducted by the same platform in June with 2,000 respondents, 60% said they had eaten alone in the past year, and among millennials and Gen Z, that number rose to 60%. Why are more people, especially the younger generation, opting to eat alone?
Right, so I want to start off with a very light but important question for today's topic. Do you guys often eat alone? Do you solo dine often?
I don't necessarily enjoy eating at a restaurant alone, but there are I think 1 or 2 meals where I have to eat actually by myself
Every
throughout the
day?
week. Yeah, throughout the week. And at first I did feel really uncomfortable, but now I've become so used to it that to a point where it's actually better to eat by myself. It feels more convenient and it's much more relaxing than eating with others. And there's also a cafeteria downstairs in Arirang. And most times I would have to eat alone only because I'm a freelancer and we don't have like set times for lunch where everyone just goes down to eat. So I have a bit more flexibility. But not surprisingly, there are so many people, individuals that eat alone.
Right.
Either with their smartphones or just with their phones,
Or their earphones.
Or their earphones. They're either listening to their music or, just watching any kind of content on their smartphone. So I noticed that there were a lot of people eating alone. So if you take a look at the screen, 1 in 2 young people actually eat more than 1 meal alone per day, which obviously includes myself. This was reported from the Korea Food Forum in 2024. And the respondents were male and female, aged between 19 and 39. So, it is become definitely a big change in social behavior where in Korea it was kind of looked down upon and like people would kind of view it in a different way.
And they will like ask, why are you
Why are you
eating by
eating alone?
yourself?
Like, do you not have anyone to eat with? But nowadays it's become more common and there are a lot of restaurants just catered for solo eating. So, but we'll talk about this little
Indeed,
later.
we will. We will talk about this in a moment. Now, I want to ask you, Walter, as well. Do you also enjoy solo dining?
I absolutely really enjoy solo dining, and for the reasons that Keelan mentioned, it's actually a time for me to sit back and watch my, favorite TV programs, YouTube, whatever.
Cozy TV?
Yeah, Cozy TV. A very, very good channel, if I have to say. But it just gives me time to relax because as a family man, I don't get that alone time anymore. Though I love my daughter very much and my wife very much, I can't sit there and just relax on my phone and just eat in peace. So whenever I get the opportunity, and not that I don't enjoy eating with people, me and Keelan eat together quite often together, but I really do enjoy those moments where I can sit back, relax, and just be immersed in my phone.
And your eating experience.
In my eating experience as well, that's always important. Good food and good something to watch.
Right, so based on the stat that you mentioned and our answer from our panelists, eating alone or solo dining has really taken off here, especially among young people in Korea. Now, going back to the term 혼밥, which means once again solo dining, it got a lot of attention when it first started several years ago because traditionally, as you mentioned, Kyun, in Korean culture, eating is considered more of a social activity, right?
It definitely was, and still will be, but I think, going back to the word 혼밥, that literally translates to eating alone in Korean. And it is a fairly new term that caught a lot of attention, especially during COVID-19, where kind of everyone had to distance themselves from other people and we had to eat alone. And usually in Korea, like you said, eating together like in pairs or in groups was the norm. And not just in homes with family members, but in schools and workplaces as well, especially in workplaces. So in schools, students would gather around in a circle to share their lunch that their parents packed for them. So it was almost like a buffet because they could choose like different food from their friends and eat together. And in offices, it was a common thing for team members to go to like restaurants and have lunch together. And back then, like seniors would have the choice of the menu. So the juniors were kind of hesitant to have lunch together.
Is that based on your experience?
Yes, that as well. So we had no choice of what to have for lunch, and it was a little uncomfortable because a lot of Koreans they eat really fast.
Right.
They just finish it in like 5 minutes. But for me, like I take my time eating because I'm just used to, I'm a slow eater, so I had to keep up with the pace of the seniors. So yeah, I had a hard time back then, but that's why I guess I like eating alone a little more these days. And the word 식구, which literally just means family, but we use 가족 more these days. But back then we used to use the word 식구, and it used to refer to people who lived under the same roof and ate together, had meals together. So Koreans would say this word to people they felt very close to, even though they weren't blood related. So like I would consider Walter as my 식구.
Oh, that's lovely.
Which literally means like we're close, but we would have like we would eat together. So sharing the food in Korea meant like they had that close bond and interaction. But obviously, things have changed these days, and I think it's becoming much more common to see people eating alone.
Right, whether it's like the cafeteria at an office or just restaurants, we can see a lot of people eating by themselves. Now, Gyun, you also briefly mentioned some of the reasons why more young people are opting to eat by themselves. Would there be some other reasons you'd like to add on?
I'd like to talk about The Office as a main example because I'm not a student anymore, obviously. You may feel comfortable, not comfortable with every team member in your team. So working together and cooperating with them, interacting with them could be part of the job, but not necessarily eating together.
Right.
That's not part of the job as well. And so I think a lot of youngsters these days working in offices want to spend this time just purely alone and just to relax and not worry about what to eat. I think they can choose what they want to eat instead of someone else choosing for them. So being a bit more peaceful and feeling flexible, I think it gives them extra freedom of that specific time within the working hours. And I think it's very different to our past generation where they had to do everything together, including having
lunch was kind
dinner.
of like extension of work, right?
Exactly, but youngsters don't want that anymore.
They don't want that anymore, apparently. It's been a while since I asked you a question,
Yes.
Walter. So do you also agree with the reasons that you mentioned?
So I think that, eating alone is just something that has developed over time, not just here in Korea, which I'll talk a little bit about later in other countries. But I don't see any sort of negative sides to eating alone. I think it's just a great time for me to, sit back and relax. But other than that, yes, the stigma has slowed. I don't even think there is a stigma anymore attached to it.
Yeah.
So I think most people are just used to seeing people alone. I think maybe depending on where you are in the which restaurant, if you were, let's say, at a barbecue restaurant or a buffet, if you were sitting alone, maybe you'd get a look or two. But yeah, I think these days the stigma has been off.
And I think you just mentioned how going to a buffet or a barbecue restaurant, if you eat by yourself, it was considered more uncommon. It's kind of a relatively less common place to solo dine. And because of that, in Korea, there's even a mini test that gauges your 혼밥 level. It measures how comfortable you are eating alone depending on the type of restaurant or food. So have you also tried this 혼밥 level test? Or do you know about it?
Not yet, but what I can say is that Koreans really love to do tests on each other, just like the MBTI personality test. So, basically it starts from having a meal alone in the convenience store. Let's say that's just level 1. Level 2 would be eating at a fast food joint. And the highest level would be what Walter mentioned, eating by yourself at a family restaurant or even a barbecue restaurant. Where you just cook meat yourself. And I actually saw a person eating by himself at a barbecue restaurant, and he was having soju by himself. And I thought, wow, that's respect. That's respect. Yeah.
Or sad.
The final level of the 혼밥 test.
If you want to put it in a positive way, that's respect. But it could be a little sad, but like we were talking about today, it's become so common that it's kind of natural for people to just eat alone now.
Right, indeed. Now, we previously mentioned how eating alone was sort of a new dining culture here in Korea. But I want to ask you, Walter, how is solo dining viewed in other cultures? Is it a relatively new scene in other cultures as well?
Well, I can only use Australia as a reference, and I feel like countries like Australia, it was never looked down upon. Australia has always been a society that respects another's choice to dine alone or to dine with somebody. In Australia as well, most of the time for lunch, especially during work days, people would bring their lunch to work anyway and sit at their office or sometimes in the communal area, so it didn't really matter. I know when I was living in Australia that, this is a long time ago now, but I would often eat alone and it wouldn't be considered strange or that person wouldn't be considered lonely. But like I said, it also would depend on the kind of restaurant that you would go to, but I still think people in at least Australia aren't too judgmental, and I think a lot of Western countries are like that as well.
I see. Now, as more people are choosing to eat solo, I've heard that businesses and brands in Korea are starting to catering to this trend. So how are they adapting to it?
Yeah, so more and more restaurants are catering to solo diners, sharing recipes for also solo meals as well. We're seeing a lot of solo meals come onto the scene these days, recommending good restaurants to dine alone.
Right.
There are very many blogs, including barbecue places. There are now like the little stalls where you can grill your own meats. These spots offer individual tables and menus specifically designed for those solo diners like myself. I actually have a friend who is the CEO of the video you're watching
really?
at the moment. So it's quite interesting that that's up. But yes, he made that restaurant specifically knowing that there are these days the trend is going towards solo diners. So yes, check out that restaurant if you saw what we're from.
I will sure do. Any other examples you'd like to add, Kyun?
Yeah, so there are local governments that are funding and designating hombap restaurants and that have tables just for 1 or 2 people, and it offers menus that you would usually have at home, so like home cooked meals, like kimchi jjigae, things like that. Some places even have like big dolls, so that you feel less lonely eating alone, and like some of them even give you like stuffed puppy dolls,
Like
put
your
on your lap.
companion?
Yeah,
Oh,
so just to feel that you're actually having food with like, your pet doll or
somebody else.
something. But it's very interesting. But I think it just shows how much Korea has changed in terms of like dining out.
right.
Culture,
It's
yeah.
definitely become a more common scene. Now, to find out what's it like in other parts of the world, we also asked our viewers if they eat alone often and what they think about solo dining. And here's what 3 of them said. If we look at the comments, Ramsey Brions 861 says, the reason why I enjoy eating solo is that I can eat at my own pace and eat the food I want to enjoy. Eating solo as well gives me headspace just to savor the flavor of my food and just be quiet and recharge. Sunny Sun 722 says, I like solo dining. It gives me some time to just focus on myself and eat what I want at my pace. Still, I sometimes feel lonely when I eat alone, but I enjoy my solo dining. XOXODNS00 says, I think people's view on solo dining has changed recently. It used to be considered as something weird in the past, but nowadays it's prevalent and nobody thinks it's weird. Rather, it gives comfort time. Right, so we're currently discussing about solo dining trends here in Korea and in other parts of the world. Now, to learn about more on why this trend is particularly popular among the younger generation, we're going to invite a Gen Z from the United States to our talks after this break. So today we're joined by Brandon M. Jones, a Gen Z from the United States. Welcome back to the show, Brandon.
Welcome, welcome. Well, thank you guys for having me back, and I appreciate it. So hello,
Thank you. So Brandon, our first question for you is the survey that we mentioned in our VCR earlier showed that more than half of young people in your country, the United States, have eaten alone at restaurants. So I want to ask you, are you actually seeing more of your peers dining solo?
I think a lot of people are dining solo more. I think Corona did play a big part of it, but there's a cultural difference between the States and Korea. As you guys said, in the Korea, you guys have to eat lunch with your coworkers, like the hyubei, sonbei kind of relationship. In America, we don't have it as much, but we work at our desk a lot. We bring our own lunch to office, so people are tending to eat alone more. Yeah.
Brandon, do you often eat alone, and like when do you prefer solo dining, and what kind of food do you usually choose?
It depends. These days, because I'm really busy, I do eat alone, but I don't think you should be eating alone every meal because you do need that social interaction so you don't go stir crazy working at home or working at the office. And what do I eat a lot these days? I mean, I just had a bowl of cereal and that was by myself. But if I'm on like lunchtime or something, maybe like a kimbap or something from a convenience store, something quick and cheap is what I usually eat these days.
So we talked about like how in Korea there are restaurants now being tailored to the solo diners. Do you see anything like that happening in the US?
Yeah, I think the solo dining culture was a little bit bigger in the States. So if you went to like a fast food place, And if you're eating by yourself, no one batted an eye about it. They had the little single booths. And I do think it's getting bigger, the culture. I know at some, I guess, Asian restaurants, like Asian barbecue restaurants, they do have the single grill, and that's becoming more popular as the Korean food culture spreads more to the States. People are embracing that kind of culture.
I see. I mean, we originally had one more question for you, Brandon, but I think that you answered them in your first and third answers as well. So I think you answered them perfectly.
Oh, yes, A+.
A+ indeed. All right, Brandon, thank you so much for your time today. It's always so nice to have you on our show.
Thank you for having me, and have a lovely day, you guys.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Right, so ending off, of course, there are pros and cons to everything, including solo dining. So I want to quickly ask both of our panelists, what do you think are some of the benefits or drawbacks of eating alone?
I can only see benefits, and we've mentioned it throughout the show, but for me, I think it's eating at your own pace. Now, I am a fast eater.
Me too.
Yes, and my wife is a slow eater. And when we go out for dinner or even at home, there is obviously a very big difference between our eating speeds. And one thing I don't like is waiting on her. Just like, I'm so impatient. It's really rude of me to be just sitting there looking at her, watching her eat, or being on my phone while she's eating.
And she might feel pressured.
She does. Well, no, she doesn't, because I'm her husband and she doesn't care what I think. But either way, it is a different style of eating, and like, I can only imagine what that would be like when you're at the office and you're like a fast eater and you're a very slow eater or something like that, and you have to match. You sort of have to, like, what we'd say, nunchi, kind of see each other's level and like see whether, oh, this person might be eating faster than me, I gotta hurry up and eat quickly. So I think the benefit is that you go at your own pace, you don't have to worry about anyone around you. That's what I see the pros of eating alone.
You can also have some me time as well.
Yes.
Then let's kind of balance our discussion.
Yeah.
What could be some of the drawbacks?
I think we should talk about the drawbacks. I think it could be like just losing human connection, human interaction. We need that kind of like social bond between people, and I think we're losing it more and more because everything's becoming like digitalized.
Right.
We're always on our phones, but I think having food and like at a dinner table gives you that time to really converse with each other, and I think it could be an opportunity to find out more about maybe your work colleagues, your seniors, or it might give you extra opportunity to get to know each other, or even on a personal level. If you're on a date, obviously you wouldn't like look at the phone the whole time. You have to make eye contact and like literally just talk to that person and get to know each other. And I think communication is really important.
Right.
It's still important, even though we're living in an AI-powered society, but we still need that kind of human interaction. And I think a lot of that happens while you have food with each other. Yeah.
So maybe like a good balance of eating by yourself and also dining with others. All right, that's all the time we have for today, but NewsGen will be back tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks today to Park Ki-eun.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.